Time for Seattle Sips, where we highlight some amazing drinks in our area. And Rapport is hosting their first ever wine tasting event focusing on Washington's Gorge wine area this month. They also launched their tasting trails and their wine quiz to guide people through a variety of different wines and palates.
Very cool. And here to share all about it, David Clawson with Rapport. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. I'm glad you're here. So tell us all about this new wine fair that you're hosting.
So it's going to be super fun. It's going to be July 23rd from 2 to 5 p.m. And this will actually be the first wine fair that we put on. We do lots of like smaller wine tastings and things like that, as you might expect. But this is going to have a bunch of winemakers from the Gorge. But this is the Gorge, not where the amphitheater is, which I think a lot of people get confused. But there's an amazing wine region that's along the Washington-Oregon border, and that's also the Gorge. And there's just some super cool, really exciting up-and-coming wineries from there. And so we're going to be featuring those wines with the winemakers pouring and all that kind of good fun. So it should be a blast.
Awesome. And we are so lucky today because we get to try some of those featured wines. So talk to us about what we have.
Yeah, so we got a variety of stuff. Again, all really kind of almost avant-garde, fun up-and-coming producers. The first one here is by a guy named Joe Swick. And his wines, he likes to do varietals that are kind of more unusual, which is common among some of the other ones as well we're going to try. This is an Albarino, so it's a Spanish grape, but it's also grown both in Washington and Oregon.
Oh, cool.
And I'll just pour a little bit for you to try.
Thank you. So what makes this one different?
I mean, just I think Washington wines, as delicious as they are known for the bigger reds, Syrahs, Cabernets, that kind of stuff. And they do an amazing job with those wines here. But what you have going on in the Gorge is, just again, a little more unusual, different varietals, a lot of older worlds, both Spanish, Alsatian, different stuff like that. You have some really crazy cool farming. So where winemakers, traditionally, a lot of wines, the winemakers will buy the grapes and then make the wines. In the Gorge, it tends to be more, and this is a great example of the next wine, where this is from a producer called Loop de Loop. So wonderful, super wonderful lady named Julia. So her and her husband bought this amazing vineyard up on this mountain, and so they farm everything themselves, all organic. Then they make the wines as well. So that kind of idea of farming your grapes, making the wine, which doesn't seem that radical. In fact, in Europe, it's pretty normal. Here is actually more unusual. But again,
meaning they're usually separated?
They are oftentimes separated. But again, now what's happening in the Gorge is you see a lot more of that type of vigneron, European type of way of making wine. And so this is actually a skin contact Viognier. So Viognier, I think a lot of people know that grape, but what's interesting about this is that, so she basically macerates the juice of this grapes with the skins of the grape, like you make, in the same way you make a red wine. So this has kind of become a popular way of making some white wines, or better yet, what people call orange wines.
Yes,
so I don't know if you've heard that term before.
Yeah, I've heard of orange wine.
Right, so this is considered an orange wine.
Okay.
I mean, isn't that crazy orange in color?
Yeah, but it's a little orange.
So it's a little bit, and that's actually where the name comes from. It's not anything to do with any oranges. There's nothing like that going on. No oranges involved. But the color, because even a white grape will has some color on the skin.
Okay.
So when you do that kind of maceration thing, it pulls out some color, and then you get generally kind of a wine that's a little bit like orangish off. But it's also it adds an interesting textural part to the wine, and it just makes it something else that's fun.
So would you say that orange wine taste-wise is between a white and a red?
Sometimes. I mean, like anything, you have tons of variety, right?
Yeah.
But what's crazy sometimes is if you pour an orange wine into maybe a black glass, you can't see what the color is at all.
Oh.
And some of them are they actually they taste like a red wine. They can have tannins, and they're and people get confused. You can really mess with people that way.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, in some ways they are.
Interesting. Okay.
So those are some fun kind of whites. And there's a couple reds here, which I love these two producers. Let's start here. So this is a very unusual grape varietal called Trousseau. So Trousseau is a grape that's found in France. It's becoming a little more popular in an area called the Jura. Also found in parts of Spain and Portugal. And I love it when in Portugal, for instance, they call it Bastardo. Which is it's no bastard. Trust me, it's a really delicious red varietal, a little bit lighter, as you can see in the color.
Yeah, it is lighter.
This is made by a guy named Steven at a winery called Analemma, and I mean, I was kind of blown away. I was there recently, visiting with many of the wineries, and his path and what he's done. He's kind of comes from Cayuse, if you never know that winery, which won Best Washington, and he started this farm in the Oregon side, where the grow the grapes all under a practice called biodynamics. And that's kind of this crazy heightened form of organics. So, it's just everything he's doing there is so holistic and kind of complete, and then just I think the wines reflect that. And
Yeah, I have to say this is more full bodied than I was expecting because of the light color. I thought it was going to be light, but it's delicious. Would we eat this with a sort of a heavier meal as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that can cover a lot of bases. I mean, personally speaking, I think it'd be great with some charcuterie. Even the cheese.
Yes,
that's
beautiful.
Just me. But yeah, they can. It's very. I think another aspect of these wines is they're very food friendly. People throw that term out and it's like, what does that mean? Well, in my mind, it's wine that has some good balance, some good acidity, sometimes the tannins too, the good structure, that can pair well with cheeses or meats and what have you.
Yes. Wonderful.
A special
yes, girl, I do. I want to make. You said this was your beautiful favorite cheese. What is this?
So that's called Lenora. It's a goat cheese, and just super delish. That one,
I love
you eat the whole thing, the rind too.
The rind too.
Yeah. So the last one, this is a super cool wine called Little Bastions, and it's two wonderful guys who, and again, this just kind of epitomizes some of the, I don't know, almost the exploratory aspect of what's happening in this area of the Gorge. So these guys actually find their vineyards they find abandoned vineyards literally on Google Maps. So they literally would take satellite views, find these old abandoned vineyards, and then contact the owners and say, hey, you're not using these vineyards anymore. Can we go there? Can we grow? Can we farm it for you? And then they very much into this natural kind of movement of wine and wanting to work organically, equally.
Yeah.
And so they will then do that and then make these wines, and they're super playful. And again, it just shows you some of the unusual fun things that are happening there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love
and so
that.
this is actually this is a blend of Pinot Noir, which I'm sure we all know, but also some Dolcetto. So Dolcetto is an Italian red varietal that's a little unusual, but I think
I've ever tried that.
Paired together, it makes something quite different, quite fun.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, you just rolled out your new Tasting Trails program at Rapport.
Yes.
What does that include?
So thank you for asking about that.
Yeah.
So first, I guess one more thing on Rapport. So first place in Seattle where you can pour your own wine and beer. I have little cards like this that let people basically access 80 wines on tap. So that's a lot of wine.
Yeah.
And a lot of people it's super fun to try things, but they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
So we have two ways of kind of going about that. We have these tasting trails, which are like, oh, you like Sauvignon Blanc, awesome. Okay, maybe start here and then try these 3 or 4 wines.
Beautiful.
We also have a fun little tasting quiz, which is digital.
Awesome.
And you can maybe kind of see it here.
Fabulous.
So it's like,
we'll actually link to that on our website.
Oh,
there.
please.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
That'd be
thank you so
amazing.
much, David.